Hi, this is Constance Towers, and welcome to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson, welcoming you to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television. Now we'll welcome back Will Ryan, Nick Santa Maria, and Michael Schlesinger later on in this hour. Will and Nick are the stars, and Mike is the writer, producer, and director of The Misadventures of Biffle and Schuster, a bona fide, authentic, and very funny DVD collection of 1930s-style comedy shorts about the greatest comedy team that never actually existed. Will Ryan, Nick Santa Maria, and Michael Schlesinger will join us later on in this hour. In the meantime, Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen are with us as they bring us This Week in TV History. Tony's segment, as always, is brought to us by our friends at Story Salon, Southern California's longest-running, regularly performing live storytelling ensemble. For more information, StorySalon.com, Facebook.com/Story Salon. What do you have for us tonight?
The last episode of the long-running TV series Little House of the Prairie
with Michael
aired
Landon.
with Michael Landon March 21st, 1983. So this is the last episode of Little House. And I do want to preface, because then later on it would be Little House, A New Beginning.
Now, as I recall, now I don't remember whether it was the original Little House or Little House, A New Beginning, but one of them ended with a bang.
That would be the last, what's called the last farewell.
Right.
Which was Little House, A New Beginning. And we've talked about it on this show. It ended with a bang for a very important reason.
Why was that?
Because Michael Landon did not want the sets that everyone knew as Walnut Grove to be used in other productions that might not be likable. The potential, you have sets built out in the wilderness, and they can be recycled. Sometimes you might make a Western, let's say, and you're going to build a little town. And the deal might be afterwards, okay, the buildings stay, and they can be rented out to future Westerns. Maybe the iconic building, where the major event takes place, has to be torn down, but the rest of the buildings can stay. And you don't necessarily have a say as to what's going to be shot there. So the potential of having, Porky's goes Porky's goes to the west, being shot there on those sacred streets of Walnut Grove were always a possibility, and Michael Landon did not want to have that potential scene happen.
Well, we've talked about this not only amongst ourselves, but when Allison Arngrim was on the program a while back. Michael Landon, not a lot of people know this, very shrewd man behind the scenes.
Yes. He learned so much doing Bonanza. I mean, it is wonderful that he had the opportunity not only to be Little Joe, and he could have taken that to the bank. He probably could have learned how to sing and done a record album and been on Tiger Beat and could have been very, very happy. But no, he wrote and he directed episodes. And he wrote and directed episodes that centered around Little Joe on some occasions. So he's the focal character, he's the writer, he's the director. He had a wonderful opportunity that he took advantage of, just like Ron Howard would do later,
like Ron Howard.
to learn. And when it came time where he would be the patriarch of a show, he knew his stuff. And he looked out for everybody, and he was in charge, and he knew what he wanted. And because he knew what he wanted, he got what he wanted.
Yep.
He was actually the longest employee of NBC. He actually,
do the math. 59, Bonanza was 59 to 73, and then he took a year off, and then he did Little House from 74 to 83?
Like 83, and then Little House continued. He was still producer. And then Highway to Heaven.
Highway to Heaven from throughout for the rest of the
1980s, basically.
So,
and then he did have one other show that did not take off.
But that was a CBS show.
Oh, that was a CBS show.
show.
If you added all those shows together, he actually was on the NBC payroll longer than Johnny Carson.
Yep. And longer than Conan O'Brien.
Yes. Well, Conan had 20 years.
Conan had a pretty long run.
He had 20 when you add his writing years on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did that. Obviously, I know friends who read the Little House books. There was a certain departure, started with Little House in the Big Woods.
Well, no. In fact, Allison talked about this when she was on the program. And again, they're written in the 19th century, different style, but they're unfilmable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because they're just very dry. And I mean, and she said it's amazing that they were as popular as they were because, I mean, and again, times were different, but she said it's just a testament to Michael Landon that he was able to cull as much material as he was from the source material.
No, I know a lot of younger girls have discovered Little House in syndication, and that has led them to the books, and they've been very depressed.
Yeah.
I mean, the books are depressing.
Mm-hmm.
I never watched Little House when it was first
It's
run.
not like the series was a laugh riot.
No, I discovered it later on. It was a good, solid show.
Yeah. It was a good, solid show. It was, and considering, again, I use the word artful, but this time in a positive way. But Little House aired in the mid to late 70s at a time of economic recession. Times were tough. Energy crisis, long lines at the gas station. People were out of work, and the dollar did not go as far as it used to. And so when you watched every Monday night the story of this family who were 100 years before, who were still trying to make ends meet, dealing with the same issues that you and I were dealing with, or our families were dealing with at the time.
Yeah, and I think the Waltons also
very
came
much
out
same.
at the
Exactly, same time.
And when the Nixon era ended,
Mm-hmm.
they left the Depression and jumped into World War II.
Exactly.
So they were able to shift gears. But Little House also, I did not realize this, that the Ingalls family were not in Walnut Grove, Minnesota for very long. I mean, they spent most of their time, I think it was in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
But they created this community, and it is a familiar town, and you create a town like this that Michael Landon was able to create based on a real place. This is like creating Mayberry or Hazard County.
Mm-hmm.
The town takes on a character of its own. And you do feel for the town if the town is suffering,
Mm-hmm.
or something like a tornado or something hit the town. You do feel the pain. You feel pain for the town.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Michael Landon realized that when the bean counters would never have fathomed that and did not want that image to be tarnished.
Yeah. Well, again, a very, very smart man, very forward-thinking man, and that's one of the reasons why. He was not only part of 3 successful shows in front of the camera, but also successful behind the scenes doing.
I have to admire.
Well.
We talked about Ron Howard. The people who really take what they learn and do something with it. I don't know if Michael Landon ever had wondered after Bonanza would he ever be on camera again.
Right.
And I think Ron Howard had those thoughts and what can I do? Where can I go from this?
Or going back to what we've talked about a while ago with regard to Gary Marshall, coming at it from a different point of view, saying, okay, look, you're when you grow up, you may not have the opportunities you have right now, so learn other aspects, take advantage to learn other aspects.
He
of
went from
business.
comedy writer to TV producer to director.
Yeah.
And you look at like Dick Martin, who had a wonderful run with Dan Rowan. I mean, as one of the great American comedy teams of the 20th century, but due to illness, Dan Rowan could not continue. And Dick Martin just would not only could not do it as a single, I don't think the public would have accepted him as a single. As an actor, yes, but but as a performer, and he jumped into the directing world thanks to Bob Newhart.
And was one of the busiest, most sought-after directors the last 15 years.
Both comedy and drama. He did a lot of In the Heat of the Night. He worked with Carol O'Connor, I believe, on Archie Bunker's Place, and with Bob Newhart on 2 shows. And he learned directing with Gary David Goldberg at the same time. And I think he also directed Family Ties. So that Dick Martin that you see on all those shows, that's the same Dick Martin. March 24th, 1980. Late-night news program Nightline, anchored by Ted Koppel, airs for the first time.
Now, it airs for the first time as Nightline, but it had already been airing for at least a year prior to that.
Since November of 1979, it was basically a segment that would come on ABC after the local 11 o'clock news.
Right, the latest, the hostage situation.
Yeah, so and that was, November 1st, 1979, November 2nd, 1979? And when the hostage crisis began, and that's when we had day 1. I mean, there's a whole generation who's not familiar with that. Day 1, day 2, and it was 444 days, right?
Yeah, a little more than a year. I mean, they waited, politically, they waited until Carter left office.
It was the day of Reagan's inauguration when they came home.
Yeah.
And so that was, the Iranian hostage crisis. And it was basically a recap of what was going on that day. I believe it might have been ABC that started the term Day One.
Right.
And, that eventually developed into a late-night news program.
And, Ted Koppel became, a news icon, one of the... especially at a time when, television news started to get, fragmented, it followed more of the Entertainment Tonight approach, where you have really short stories. Nightline was one of the few places on network television where you would have a long-form look at one of the major stories of the day,
and giving viewers an option besides comedy.
Yeah,
comedy late at night.
That's right. That's right. And not a classic example of counter programming, because Nightline continue with Ted Koppel behind the desk for close to 30 years. I think he finally stepped down 2006 or 2007.
Yeah. So Frank Reynolds also was originally, when it was America held hostage.
Yeah.
He was the one that was hosting that, but just Ted Koppel is the face that everyone is very familiar with. And I think for a lot of people who do not keep regular hours, where coming home...
Exactly.
Now we have the 24 hours, so we have to factor that into the timeline. CNN was still a couple of years off. And even with CNN, it wasn't readily available to everybody. So let's say that person who comes home from work, which would be normally during prime time, at that time you had 3 networks. You were going to be watching your sitcoms or your talk shows or something like that.
Yeah. And
really, to get the national news recapped, Ted Koppel was great for that.
Yeah. Of course, Nightline has continued since Koppel stepped down. It's still called Nightline, but it's a different show. It's
more of a magazine.
More of a magazine type format. Yeah.
And like you brought up Entertainment Tonight, and I think a little element of 60 Minutes there, that you have more of a team going, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. There were great Koppel interviews where you would see Koppel in the foreground basically turning around looking at what is in essence a blue screen.
Oh, yeah.
And you're looking at this larger-than-life figure that he would be having this interview to. And I know a lot of people made fun because most of the interview you saw the back of Koppel's head.
Right. But at the same time, and this is going back to what kind of impact he had at the time. In the late '80s, before in my prior career, I worked in the legal field, and the senior partner of the firm where I was working at the time, almost every morning he would hold court at the water cooler, and he would talk about, did you watch Ted Koppel last night? And he would go, and it was always especially if it had to do with a burning legal issue, if they had someone like Barry Schenck or Laurie Levinson, and it was just one of those things that would bring people together in the workplace.
It was an excellent show. I mean, the show is still an alternative to people who want comedy at that hour. And I think the other networks, even though it is always teetering from, I think, ABC's standpoint, because ABC wants something that will get more eyeballs.
Yeah. Kind of like this program. This program is a counter to people who are who want something different than, especially for our listeners on the East Coast.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But, I do remember after 9/11 when Jay did his first show, and there was a tone where he said, if you're not ready to laugh, Nightline's a good show.
That's right. Yeah.
He brought that up. So I think at least, from the bean counters at the networks, it was one thing. But I think both Jay, Dave, and I think before Johnny, there was a certain respect.
Sure.
This guy was not our competition. This guy creates a good product, and the public had the right to choose whether they wanted to laugh with me or they wanted to be informed with the other guy.
Right. Counter programming.
Exactly. Koppel was a guest on everybody's show, and proved to be very funny.
Yes, exactly.
He got to when the Kennedy Center honored Johnny Carson. Koppel was one of the presenters, and he did a spot-on Jack Nicholson impersonation. He said when you saw him in The Shining, and he busts through the door with the axe, and he says, "Here's Johnny." He said nobody went, Johnny who? But he did it, and Letterman came on later and he said, who knew Koppel was that funny? But yeah, Koppel, definitely one of those people, you will never see the likes of him again. He's still around. I mean, I'm not speaking posthumously.
Yeah. No, I know, but he's just, I think these days he does his occasional specials for the Discovery Channel and doing, doing good long-form television journalism, but just not as often as he used to.
No, definitely not. But, that's kind of how Cronkite did it as well.
Yeah.
He definitely had his point where he didn't quite fade away, but just wasn't a fixture every night on TV. And I'm glad some of these old school people are around.
Yeah.
Because I think some of the younger people need to really take time and study them.
So speaking of fixtures, I understand we're going to go from Nightline to Dateline.
To Dateline, yeah. It's just the way the calendar works. Yep. March 31st, 1992. That premieres on ABC. I'm sorry, on NBC. Dateline NBC. Yeah, the NBC attempt to catch up with the popular magazine shows of CBS and ABC, because CBS had 60 Minutes, which I think was, still the gold standard of magazine shows. ABC had 2020, and NBC, that's their attempt at Dateline.
With Dateline with the aptly named Stone Phillips.
Yes, one of the stiffest guys on.
I understand he's a very nice man, but one of my friends at the East Coast used to produce Dateline, and
hard to get him straight now.
Hard to get him straight now, yes, aptly named, but I understand he has a sense of humor about it.
Yeah, it is who he is, and he got the job, and granted, you're not supposed to be dancing around on that set.
Exactly.
And to be fair, people make fun of Mary Hart, Nancy O'Dell, Billy Bush, because they also have to basically stand in one place. When it looks like they have all this place where they could be running around and acting up like more comedic character. No, the camera is kind of locked down when they expect you to stand exactly.
And again, it's like given the subject matters that they often covered on that show, and we can easily spend a segment on the times where they went too far with entrapment and stuff like that. But you need someone who can you kind of set the tone and be serious, and because this was an attempt to do fairly journalistic stuff.
They did a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
I think where they did sometimes overproduce segments to make certain things happen, like rigging a truck to blow up to demonstrate a flaw that, a legitimate problem, but they couldn't count on that flaw to work on camera, so they had to manipulate it.
Yeah.
It's great if you're doing Mythbusters and doing that, but I think they became the story.
Yes.
No, but the show didn't start that way.
No.
No, it was good stories, and I think they're just trying to capture ratings. I mean, they would go for the more sensationalized things.
Yes, they fall into the trap everybody else falls into. Especially when you're on prime time.
You're on prime time, and they do want to get ratings.
Yeah.
And when you get into this reenacting portion, that was the problem.
Yes.
They tried. The problem was legit. Nobody disputes that. But to have the truck blow up on camera, you can't just wait for it to happen.
Yeah.
And they were called on it, and deservedly so. And they apologized. I think one of the things that people know of Dateline is that it got overplayed the same way Millionaire got overplayed.
It was on
ABC.
At one point, I believe it was on 4 nights a week.
Yeah,
something like that. It's amazing.
And when you look back at other shows that get overplayed, and Millionaire comes to mind. There's a lot of other examples that come to mind. It becomes a joke.
Exactly. You lose its effectiveness, and again, people stop watching because there's no sense in watching it tonight on Tuesday because they know it'll be on Sunday or Friday.
Exactly.
And they may run the same story more than one time a week.
Yeah, and they had a great deal of success with their To Catch a Predator series. And it kept running and running and running and running, and I'm sure...
And it became more sensationalized as it went on.
Yeah.
I mean, something that started out good to enough already, or find a new way to present it.
And I think, sadly, the thing about that is this was a great opportunity for them to show what is out there on the Internet. and how dangerous it could be.
Yeah.
And it was showing at a time when a lot of parents couldn't turn on the computer, and their kids could do all these incredible things with the computer. And I think because they sensationalized it, it lost its effectiveness. And you had groups of people that were really, being advocates for young people and, trying to protect them from the predatory element. But you overplay it, and people say, "Oh, I'm tired of seeing this show."
Yeah. Well, again,
I'm sure law enforcement appreciated it.
Of course, but again, it's the eternal problem. If you do it straight, then you can't put it on prime time because people will want to watch, not Three's Company, but they'll want to watch Roseanne, or they'll want to watch. Whatever else was on, a Murder She Wrote, or some of the other things that are on competition. If you're going to do 4 nights and it's all to catch a predator, right,
people want to escape. And I think any executive in the industry will say television is supposed to provide an escape. Yeah. It should be informative. It should be letting you know certain things are out there. But at the same time, when television is providing something that the audience needs, another thing that the audience wants to escape from, I think you've overdone it. childoftelevision.blogspot.com, childoftelevision.blogspot.com, also storysalon.com or facebook.com/storysalon. Donna's new book, by the way, is called Fall Again, Beginning. It's a romantic novel that asks the question, what would you do if you met the perfect person, only it was not the perfect time? For more information, go to fallagainseries.com. Tony and Donna will be back with us at the end of our second hour. In the meantime, we'll take a quick time out. Then Will Ryan, Nick Santa Maria, and Michael Schlesinger will join us next on TV Confidential. Ed Robertson along with Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen from Story Salon, Southern California's longest-running, regularly performing live storytelling ensemble, which I understand is at a new location.
Yeah, we're very excited about it. We're moving, actually, to the Party Art Studio on Laurel Canyon Boulevard, 5302 Laurel Canyon. It's a new art gallery, and it's
beautiful.
It's beautiful. Donna and I have been involved with Story Salon for the last 9+ years. We're going to be in an art gallery now. We're going to have a $5 cover, some nice refreshments, and a wonderful eclectic evening of storytelling.
Which is a great environment because, it as you say, the word is eclectic, and for $5, it's a great evening of entertainment. You can't ask for much more.
No, not at all. And these stories, some of them are funny, some of them are tragic, some of them are a little off the wall, but we just have a wonderful time keeping the art of storytelling alive.
And you can find out more about it by going to storysalon.com.
Accredited by Guinness World Records, welcome to Archival Television Audio Incorporated, a peerless TV soundtrack archive, preserving the audio from television's first 3 decades, the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the golden and silver age of television.
For more information, go to atvaudio.com.
We're Biffle and Schuster. How do you do? We turned up here to spread some cheer and entertain you.
That's right, we're Biffle and Schuster. I'm Benny Biffle, and this is Sammy Schuster. And we're here to tell you about this amazing DVD, not BVD, DVD, that just came out from a company called Kino Lorber. And you know what Kino Lorber means, don't you, Sammy?
I sure do. It means sales. Lots of sales.
This collection is called The Misadventures of
Biffle and Schuster.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys
it's terrific.
Good. Yeah, you know what Joe Dante says about them?
What did he say?
He says, forehead slapping funny. What impresses is the dogged authenticity to the era, which makes it all the more hilarious.
Absolutely. Accent on the high.
We're
Biffle and Schuster, as you can see. No one else can make that statement louder than we. They say we're soporific, and it's probably we. Because we're Biffle and Schuster. Oh, we're Biffle and Schuster. No, we're Biffle and Schuster.
B-I-F-F-Biffle, Biffle. S-H-W-S to Schuster.
Biffle and Schuster. Need we say more?
Available wherever DVDs are sold through our friends at Kino Lorber.
All right, you loafers, get back to work. What am I paying you for? Why is he yelling at his shoes?
You can listen to this show all over again as a podcast on TuneIn, iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and other podcast platforms. Best of all, it's free. To find out how to subscribe to the TV Confidential podcast, go to the homepage at televisionconfidential.com and click Subscribe now.